Hey now, welcome to the dirty side of the track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. Today was the Vegas GP. I'm trying to think when it actually happened. For us, it was today. This morning, it is still morning. Welcome, Rob. How are you, man?
I think I'm doing a lot better than you because I gave in to old man syndrome and I took a power nap. I went to bed at 10 p.m., got up at 12:45, made my way downstairs, watched the race, to bed. Unlike you young un that's out drinking the night away and looking really
Tired.
morning challenged, I'm going to call it.
Yeah, I got a handful of hours sleep. Went well, went well. It was, you know what? Let me say this. I spent the morning as I grabbed a shower and got cleaned up, and I thought to myself, what's an analogy for this? And I know we'll take the whole race apart and we'll get into it, but I feel like this was the Wright brothers. A great American story like Vegas in and of itself. 12-second flight at first, no one cared. The race weekend started poorly, but look at us, we fly now. And that race
Yeah,
came around at the end and saved an abomination of a weekend.
agree. And I'll come to my take on that
Yeah, we'll get there.
later as I kind of briefed you slightly before we started recording. I need you to be ready with your music button a little bit earlier than you normally are. So let's hit this. Let's do news and social. Pull apart the weekend that was the Vegas Grand Prix. I think fantasy is actually updated, which is really bizarre.
While we were sleeping.
Um, I know. I mean, literally, it only feels like a few hours ago that the race was on. So okay, that's cool. Um, we've got what else we got? Oh, we got Abu Dhabi preview.
Yeah, and Paul.
Um, and Paul, and then we'll get out of here and go and see if we can catch up on sleep, I guess.
I guess so. Let's do it.
So this week, it started off that cars were trickling through, unveiling their liveries for Vegas. What ended up turning into was it was easier to name the ones that didn't run special liveries for Vegas. So let's dive in.
Totally.
I'm not sure this is the order they were announced, but it was the order in which I saw them, and therefore that's all that matters. So Ferrari revealed they had a red and white Skiller color scheme that paid homage to what it had raced in the 1970s, and I loved the rear wing.
Loved it. I loved the
Oh,
whole car. And like
yeah, I did.
at
But
first I saw it, I wanted more. I wanted the yellow. I'm like, I'm missing the yellow. Where's the yellow? You know, where's all the rest of the black? Like it was just red and white. I loved it. After I saw it on track in the lights, I'm like, they should bring this back regularly. This is probably my
100%.
favorite Ferrari livery, like one-off livery I've seen in a while. I thought it was great.
Agree. And then Red Bull have been doing this Make Your Mark campaign where they've had like fans competing to kind of win to have their design on the car. And it was the last one here, which I think they did it for each of the US races. Again, I kind of like this one as well. I like the little attention to detail on
Yeah.
the Red Bull. It didn't quite look as different as say the Ferrari did. It didn't grab your attention and go, oh, that's nice. But so this is a livery that works well when it's in park ferme and the cameras can zoom in and look at all the
Yes.
little nice little detailing on it, right? When it's whizzing past at 200
You
miles
don't,
an hour,
yeah.
you're like, that's a Red Bull.
Exactly. I thought the same thing. And they put the little, they painted the wheels and this, that, and the other, like poker chips on. It's almost like they said, what can we do to the car we currently have? And just started putting stuff on it. Ferrari was like a redo. So
Yeah, true.
I didn't think the Red Bull was that great.
And then Williams, oh, did
Loved it.
loved it. They've just whoever is in charge of their liveries this year just it
Nailing
deserves a
it.
race.
Yes. I mean, seriously, their British Grand Prix. I mean, they've had so many good ones this year. It's
Yeah,
they've really nailed it. And then Alfa Romeo, in my mind, and I'm going a little again out of order, but Alfa Romeo, I thought was the other big change, like Ferrari,
yeah.
where and Williams was a big change, but I mean, like it still was a Williams. The Alfa Romeo, I thought was a Mercedes every time they showed it. I mean, I
Yeah.
know what they tried to do, and I loved it. The deck of cards and the a whole
The
thing.
deck of cards looked like the little Mercedes logos
Yeah, it
at
did.
speed, didn't it?
When they were whizzing by, I'm like, is that Lewis? But wait, no, that's gotta be, no, it's George. Oh, it's
Well, they got
Valtteri.
confused at the beginning of the race because they were convinced Alonso and Hamilton had
Were they?
come together and spun each other around, and then it was about the third replay where they're like, "That's Valtteri Bottas."
Who got pushed? Well, we'll get there.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Alpine, mm, it's it. This isn't a one-off livery. This is they changed to me, unless I really missed it. They just had one new sponsor that was for this
Yes.
race only, and they put a new sponsor on,
And
and
they
that
made
was
the
it.
clothes with the triangle thing on the back. I'm like, yeah, this is a money grab.
Same
But
as
it is
kind of
Vegas.
McLaren. McLaren just slapped a Jack Daniels logo on the side. That's all I really saw that was any different there. I
Yeah.
think. You've mentioned Alfa Romeo, and then Alpha Tauri. Eh,
Or did
I mean,
they did something I didn't even notice.
they did. They just like where they've got the white bull logo on the back of it. They kind of
Yeah.
just distorted that into kind of all these swirly things that apparently go in line with their, I guess it's a clothing collection, but the AlphaTauri Brendan Monroe Las Vegas capsule collection.
Blue Bulls.
Rolls right off the tongue, right?
It does. Speaking of things that roll right off the tongue, someone decided $1 billion is the right valuation for Aston Martin. A billion, or I guess euros, but regardless, Lance Stroll sold a part of Aston Martin F1, the F1 team itself, to Arctos Partners. It's a private equity firm that has other investments in sports, apparently. But the valuation is my point. It's an even cool billion. And again, they didn't sell a billion of it. They sold a portion of it, which the amount they bought and the amount they bought it at gave the team a value of $1 billion. The reason I'm highlighting that for the third time is Alpine, famously with all their celebrity investors and all their, people hanging around, 725. So you're telling me that Aston Martin is, 250 or more $1 million valuable than Alpine?
When did you see an Alpine badge on a James Bond car?
True, and Aston Martin
the brand must add to that valuation.
But it's only the F1 team. It's not.
It doesn't matter.
The car
Aston
proper.
Martin, isn't it? So, what do you want? What would you rather be driving, an Aston Martin or an Alpine?
An Aston Martin, of course.
There we go. Then you see.
But
so you just
I just was
higher.
shocked at the difference in it, and Aston Martin has a new team facility, so maybe that factored in. I'm assuming you got a portion of that as well. But anyway, that was a big delta.
Yep. What else we got? General Motors is registered as a Formula One power unit supplier from the 2028 season, which might not sound that interesting. Oh, great! So you're a car company that are going to make engines. Wow. But it kind of puts pressure on now that with them having their plans to build their own engine and be ready to be used within a couple of years, it really kind of ups the ante on the whole. Why wouldn't you accept Andretti
Right.
GM? Because they'll come in as a buying an engine, or they'll take an engine from someone else, but within literally a couple of years they'd be running their own engine, which is a big deal. So interesting to see how that one plays out.
Definitely.
F1 Academy, American driver Leah Block will represent Williams next year, and she's the daughter of Ken Block, who is the Extreme E rallycross and rallying dude that unfortunately passed away earlier this year. So that was nice to see that she's got the drive for next year. So it's all coming together.
She's been fun to watch. I mean, even before her father passed, I knew of Leah, and you could see her videos and what she was doing. She's incredibly talented in a car. I don't know her racing pedigree, but we'll see how that, what she's done, but we'll see what that turns into. I am excited, though, that Williams did this, and I can't wait to watch Leah in the F1 Academy car for Williams. Rob, did you watch the Netflix Cup? No, I did. I watched the whole
zero interest in it.
2.5 hours of that debacle. We'll talk a little more about it, but newsworthy, it's in the video vault. The newsworthy portion was when Carlos dropped the trophy.
Now that I saw, that was funny.
Yeah, that was really funny. His partner, Justin Thomas, could not stop laughing at that point when he dropped it. It was fantastic to see them having fun and the relationships between the drivers, golfers, and partners. And again, I'll talk more about it briefly later. But
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not the world's biggest golf fan. I will watch like the Open and the Masters, but I won't go for anything lower than that. And even then, I'm probably only watching Sunday to see who wins. Right? I'm not going to sit there for 3 days and watch it. This was just kind of like, to me, a video of your mates playing around. They just happened to have drivers doing it. There was zero draw for me to want to go and see it. So once I'd seen the clip on Instagram of him dropping the trophy, I was done. I saw the best bit.
I'm gonna hold my powder. I'll get into it in a second.
But yeah, I mean, he basically did a Lando and broke the trophy. But speaking of Lando, he was being asked if he'd prepped for the Vegas circuit at all. And I loved this answer. And there's no reason for him to have made it up, so I hope it's 100% true. He said, there's actually a simulator in the mall, and it's a bit of a rip-off. You have to pay $65 for it, and if you win, you can win $200. Well, I entered under my brother's name, so he's now actually $140 better off. I was 45 seconds quicker than P2, so it was really close.
45 seconds. Was P2 driving backwards? Oh
my gosh, can you imagine?
I can't. Actually, again, I have a link about Charles racing regular people in a simulator. We'll get to that in the vault. And then obviously Vegas, baby, Vegas gambling. So as of now, we don't have any reports a few hours after the race what the handle, as they call it, was, the amount of money bet. But BetMGM Chief Revenue Officer Matt Prevost said popularity for auto sports in the U.S. continues to grow, and the activity we've already seen around the event is remarkable. Race weekend in Las Vegas has the potential to shatter every company record for motorsport. So we will see if it did. And Rob Reed sent us that tip. Rob, thanks for the heads up there, Mr. Gladwell. That was a good one. I did not have any money on the race. I should have because I don't know. It was so exciting. We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
And then last but not least in the news, friend of the show, Jacques Villeneuve, got married in Vegas. So there we go. I mean, we didn't get an invite. I haven't seen anything from Paul either, so I don't know if Paul got an invite. It seems like it was a very impromptu. Well, that's what they're saying. I wonder if they
Yeah.
planned it or not. I don't know.
I
But
don't know,
yeah,
but
congratulations,
This is Jacques
Jacques
Villeneuve,
and
and you're
Mrs.
listening
Jacques.
to the dirty side of the track.
and I just got married in Vegas.
Well done, Brian. They totally nailed that.
It was him. It was him talking the whole time. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. So shall we move to the video vault, Rob?
Let's do it.
All right, let's open up this bad boy. There were a lot of options this week, man. So many videos. Like, it felt as though the fact it was Vegas, teams were trying to roll out everything from a social media perspective. So I kind of curated the videos for everybody this week. So first off, it's in the show notes, Ted's qualifying notebook, the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Obviously, it's on Sky Sports, and we could not get the replay to work here in the States unless you have VPN. But we found it on a recast on the MKTV channel, and we're mentioning this because it was brought to our attention by Andy, Music Andy, that Paul was on the notebook, and Paul's been on the notebook before, but it was really good. Basically, Ted is walking along in the paddock and goes by the Alfa Romeo Hospitality, and he's talking about Valtteri's poster, which we can talk about next night. Calendar, thank you.
Yes.
And he starts talking about it, and Paul walks out of the hospitality, and the two of them get into a debate on what is art and how it's in the eye of the beholder, and they kind of go on, and it was fascinating. Now, Rob, tell everyone a little bit about Valtteri's calendar, and have you ordered it already?
I haven't ordered it yet. I was kind of hoping, as we head towards Christmas, maybe Paul's going to drop something in our mailbox, So
I like the idea.
I gotta think Ted a little bit of a prude because he's making out to Paul that this is the most explicit calendar ever, and you couldn't possibly show it on TV. Which maybe you can't show a pair of ass cheeks on TV, right? The way Ted's like building it up in this clip, I'm thinking, Jesus, was this a full frontal that Valtteri did? But
Maybe.
it's just more of his stream butt cheek shenanigans that he told us about, which we mashed up seamlessly into the 100th episode that we did last week, by the way. So it's just more of those. It's just Valtteri's ass cheeks in
But I
various
don't think
locations.
Ted's a prude because he was walking around talking to any young, attractive woman. He basically walked up during the notebook just to random young women and said, hello, like James May style. You got to start with hello, right? Okay, so then McLaren driver Oscar Piastri breaks down racing movies on GQ Sports. I have always loved these, and anyone who's listened to the pod for a while knows you can always count on me to find when F1 drivers are on the GQ or GQ Sports channel. It's nearly 13 minutes. I like this. Oscar is the man, and as I wrote this before the race weekend, I said he's really fallen off form as of late, which obviously proved wrong. Orlando has raised his game, which could be right as well. But let's go, Oscar. This was fun. Like, I love these. Daniel Ricciardo's done this. They've had Albon on there and my favorite things. So definitely, it's 13 minutes, but I recommend it highly. The Las Vegas Grand Prix opening ceremony, 30 minutes. This was streamed live on YouTube. I just wanted to make sure we talked about it. We have it in the links. I didn't hate this. I didn't love it. I know I wrote I liked this. I liked it enough because I wanted to like it, but it wasn't as cringeworthy as at least as I thought it was going to be. It was 30 minutes. It was a Super Bowl halftime show for 27 minutes, which is fine. It's a collab of all these different artists. This time they didn't work together. They just did, here, you all get 3 minutes, bang, 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 bang. And then there were 3 minutes of intros, which were incredibly harmless.
I got to be honest. I'm going to say sweeping across this entire weekend, I don't think I hid behind my pillow in cringe moments because I think Vegas. There's a couple where they went a little bit Vegas, but actually stepping back and looking at that whole weekend and going, was this the absolute cringe fest I was dreading? No, I thought they did it pretty well in a lot of areas, and this was like, I didn't enjoy this because I didn't like all of the choice of artists. So for me, I
Right.
skipped a lot of the artists and then watched 3 minutes of them coming up and down on platforms and waving. Again, they didn't make them do anything stupid. They didn't have to wear, like, I don't know, Elvis outfits, or,
Right.
they didn't make them do anything other than wave.
Did
That's what they do on
you
a driver's parade. So
Well, did you see the intro for the driver's parade?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
that was
Now
bad.
that,
That was the one
but
that I hid behind my couch for a little bit.
yeah, only because of maybe Checo's reaction, which was priceless. But
And the guy yelling in his face, Bruce Buffer. Okay, Carlos and Charles on racing and partying in Las Vegas. It's on the Formula One channel. It's 5 minutes. They gave them questions to ask each other. I enjoyed this a lot. My favorite part, though, was the revelation that Charles had been to Vegas once before and was there for partying with Daniel Ricciardo. And I'm thinking to myself, that's an unlikely duo to end up together in Vegas. I'm not saying, that I know all the friendships that exist in the paddock, but if you'd asked me who would Charles have been at Vegas with, Danny Rick would have been low on my list of options, probably somewhere down near the bottom. But anyway, that was a fun little game. And then the one I did reference, F123, Las Vegas virtual showrun featuring Charles Leclerc on the Formula One channel, is an hour. It was a couple days before the race, or maybe a day before, Wednesday or so. It was great. I enjoyed this. This is right up my alley. Like this was really good, where you had Charles, you had a couple Raiders football players, you had Jamie Chadwick, you had other media personalities and content creators. We follow Ash Vandalay. She was on there. And I'm not going to say who won, but spoiler alert, it's the F1 driver, kind of like Lando at the mall. It was Charles. And I thought it was great, though. I really enjoyed watching it. And then relatedly, before I close with a building one, we mentioned the Netflix Cup. I just want to highlight this real quick, and it's not in the notes. You guys can go find it on Netflix. 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I love this thing called The Match. I don't know if anyone's ever watched it. I'm not a big golf watcher, but I do watch The Match. It's behind the scenes golf. Like you said, Rob, it's like watching a bunch of buddies play golf. And they mic up, Phil Mickelson or Tiger Woods or Justin Thomas or any of these golfers. They get them mic'd up, and then they introduce now other athletes from other sports. So Patrick Mahomes and Steph Curry and Tom Brady, and they get these games going for charity. And it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of smack talk. This had none of that. I don't understand. It missed all of the charisma of the match, and they do it at the Wynn more often than not, the same course. So I'm watching this. I mean, where is the fun in this? And the best part was just watching Pierre Gasly hit chili pepper shots that don't leave the ground, and spectators were jumping out of the way and dodging and ducking. And I mean, I felt good knowing some of these guys are as bad as I am, but other than that, I thought for some reason it just didn't do it for me. I don't know what people's thoughts are. Please let us know if you guys loved it. And the last one, real quick, the race that turned Las Vegas into an F1 track, the B1M channel. I like this channel. It's kind of a variety of a confluence of my many channels coming together. It's about construction and building amazing things. And for 10 minutes, they showed how they turned this track and built the paddock and what they did. It was fun. If you're a nerd for stuff like that, give it a check out. And with that, we will close up the video vault. So, Rob, anything happen in practice?
that's so funny, isn't it? Normally we like skip through practice and go, yeah, practice. They drove around, they got their setup sorted. Right, on to quali. So,
Oh my gosh.
Vegas Grand Prix weekend, is it a tale of two halves?
Yeah.
I think if you kind of lump practice into one half and then quali in the race into another. So, yeah, I was at the bar with my neighbour Jim. Thursday night football had finished. We were finishing up a couple of pints, and then yes, I did finish them, by the way, Paul. And we suddenly looked at the. Jim said to me, "When does the Grand Prix start?" Like, "Oh yeah, it's 1 a.m. Oh, but when's practice?" And we looked, "Oh, it's on now." So we spoke to the barmaid, and we're like, "Okay, Thursday night football's well over. Can you put ESPN on?" Yeah, puts it on. Fantastic. There's FP1 just starting. We're like, "Oh, great. We're going to stay here for another hour then till kickout time. Let's have another couple of pints in." And lasted 8 minutes before we were like, what's going on? And for a while they didn't know either, right? We just kept
Right.
seeing signs driving along and kind of getting that lift up, that kind of like, what the hell
Tons of
happened there type
sparks.
thing.
Pulls over.
Sparks, what the heck's going on? And yeah, it's manhole cover, maybe we'd call it in the UK, drain cover, I think they would like to call it over here.
Manhole
Um,
cover works.
okay, cool. Yep, it come off at a rate of knots and made a decent hole in the bottom of the Ferrari, and that's it. They've now got to go and do checking of probably not just that one. I imagine they have to go and check others, and FP1's done, and FP2 just gets delayed and delayed and delayed while they're trying to work all of this out. Now, no, I'm going to hold my gunpowder. I'm going to keep my gunpowder dry here for a minute. This will come later before when we get to Paul's review of all of this. Um, Now, the real problem is P2 starts, but there's no fans there. Now,
None.
I've read conflicting things here, Brian. I don't know if you've heard it. I've heard security staff were tired and wanted to go home. So that was why they had no security and they had no other kind of logistical staff that would be able to deal with crowds. So that's why they weren't allowed in. I also heard that they said that because they pushed FP2 back so far, it was going to run right up until they had a commitment with Vegas to get the roads back open again. And they were like, well, if there's crowds in the stands, it's going to
Take
take an
longer.
extra 45 minutes to get everybody out of or maybe an hour to get everybody out of the grandstands. And we can't do that. We have to open the public roads at whatever it was. Maybe the truth was somewhere between the two, but it just sucked.
Oh, it was terrible. I mean, I heard both as well. Um, so people paid a lot of money to go, and when tickets were expensive, outside the last 2-3 weeks, when tickets were expensive, a lot of people bought single day tickets, and the
Yeah.
cheapest one was that day, and it was still $1,000 in a lot of cases, or $500 or more, a lot more than that if you had a seat. And people paid this money and came in to watch this, and drain covers happen. I don't think either one of us is saying that's the problem. Like they should have done a better job, but it seemed like the one that hit Carlos's car actually got sucked out in its entirety, not just the cap, but the whole apparatus around it. But that happens, okay? Like let's not lament the first problem. It was a problem. It shouldn't have happened, but it happens. The delay to FP2 and not telling anybody that they wouldn't be allowed to stay until very late into the night. People waited hours for FP2 to start, then to only get kicked out after waiting. And I watched people on Reddit and on Twitter showing what they did to watch. There are escalators on the sides of the strip, and people would just go up and down the escalators continuously to see the cars go by at 2:30 to 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning. They ran F1 cars local time until 4 in the morning. That is all of that is ridiculous because they had such a bad schedule to start with because they had to open the roads. They had no wiggle room for something to go wrong. It went wrong. They screwed the fans. And it made us as Americans, me as an American, look dumb that we'd had this all set up this way. You're right. Whether it's they had to turn the track around or they didn't have enough security, regardless, that was a bad look. Of course, there would be a lawsuit. It's already been filed. God bless America. There's billboards with attorneys' names. That lawsuit was set up by 5 in the morning local time, and so you look at it. And it did not work. And then the part that kicked really hard at me that I did not like was Ferrari getting a penalty. They had to rebuild their car. It's the end of the year, so naturally they've used all of the items in their allotment. They had to go outside their allotment. If this had been earlier in the year, he wouldn't have had those penalties. But because it's a brand new race at the end of the year, he gets hosed. And at the time, again, before the race, he was 3 points behind Lando for fifth and 6 points behind Fernando for fourth. And I'm watching this thinking Carlos is the most unlucky man around. No, he's not.
Valtteri Bottas disagrees.
Yeah, Valtteri would disagree and then proved it in the race. And Ferrari, while 20 points behind Merck for third is a lot of points to make up at the end of the year in 2 races. Again, all these things played into my mind, and I watched this and I said, oh, this did not start right.
Yeah. Again, I've got a Rob's rant coming. So let's move through quali and play Paul, and then
Okay. I haven't heard
fire up
Paul, so
Rob's
I'm looking
rant.
forward to it. I haven't heard Paul's notes, so I'm looking forward to
Okay.
it.
I listened on the way to football this morning, so that's why I know that we should play track 1 after quali. It makes sense there. It wasn't a sprint weekend, but we've
No.
got a double helping of Paul. So anyway,
Quali kind of, for me, was a transition from like chaos of practice to a good race. And it was like kind of in the middle. Not the wildest thing you've ever seen, but not bad either.
I'd agree. We kind of had like Q1 didn't set the world alight. It was disappointing to see Lando go out, so we kind of lost Lando, Ocon, Zhou, Piastri, and Tsunoda. So Piastri as well. We got double McLaren,
Double McLaren.
elimination.
I went, wow.
which I didn't see coming because I thought this might be a track that would suit them, because it's all flat out and not too many of those slow corners they
But
don't like.
apparently
So
enough slow corners that crushed them.
yeah, maybe. So what really then started adding the spice was as we moved it through Q2, and I'm watching the leaderboard, and okay, we got Danny Rick and Stroll and Hulk looking like they're heading out, and then I'm watching Hamilton and Perez just drop down the leaderboard as other cars are coming round, which by the way includes both Williams.
Yeah.
How good a job did they do in qualifying?
They did a great job in quali. I don't know what happened in the race. We'll talk about it. But why did they put Checo into the garage with 4.5 minutes left in the session instead of bolting on a fresh set of softs and running him out there? You got to be in it to win it. And when they put him in the garage, I'm like, is he that safe? There's no track evolution. He was like 6th, and
I know, and
he wasn't wildly safe. I'm like, what? I'm like, they must know.
One more thing is like they already said that the soft wasn't going to be a race tire. So
right.
why hold all those in your back pocket? Because you're not going to use them. It's just bizarre. So we saw the inevitable happened, and Perez was pipped, and then I think one of the last couple of cars that came around knocked Hamilton out as well. So and then Q3, it had been threatened all week. We've only had my days are all muddled up with whatever
all these
happened.
night
But
races at 2 a.m.
Ferrari looked like they had pace, and so it came to pass. We got Charles in pole. Sainz put it in second, which he won't stay in because of what you've already covered. But forget penalties for a minute. Case-wise, Ferrari won.
Amazing, yeah.
Verstappen came in next. Russell, Gasly, Albon, Logan.
Logie
up there. At this point, I'm getting super excited for the race, thinking that the Alpha looks spicy. K-Mag and Alonso rounded it out. So it was all set up, like you said. Like we transitioned from the, oh my gosh, I didn't want to even go near Twitter because of all the haters about the debacle of what had gone on. And now I'm sort of kind of like quite optimistic and think, can this? Everyone's told me this is just going to be Monaco. It's going to be a procession. There'll be no overtaking. It's going to be boring. It's going to have to put on a show because the race won't back it up. At this point, I'm going,
I am too. And I'm confused, if I'm honest. When quali was done, I was confused a lot. On Discord, Rob and I got into some discussions with folks throughout the weekend, and both of us had a few rants. One, after the practice sessions, I said I was confused and disappointed with the way things had gone, and I'm happy that it turned around. Like I said, the Wright brothers, boy, eventually we flew that plane, and we did a good job. But man, quali, like there were so many different cars and manufacturers and constructors up there. Like where in the heck did Alpine find any pace this weekend? They have a power deficient engine
car that we'd seen at the beginning
last year. And the beginning is what happened there. And then Williams was up there, and then Valtteri. And Joe was like out early, and he said the whole Max and Esteban debacle in Q1 cost him.
That.
Yeah,
shame on us there. So
yeah, well, that cost. Joe said he got caught behind that, and that's unfortunate if that's true, and that's not good. But I mean, look at what Valtteri did with that car, and the Haas K-Mag kept the downgrades on and made it to Q3. I mean, this was like I'm sitting here thinking, oh yeah, this is gonna be great.
So let's play Paul's track first, and then I'll have a Rob's rant before we go on to the race.
Okay, so I'm gonna play his intro music now and not later, and it'll go with this one. Yes, it's too late. I already clicked the button. I mean, I'm not one to tell Andy what to do with music, but there's a that has to happen in there somewhere, but okay.
Hey now, right, it's Friday night, so it feels like I'm about to do another sprint race, triple donger, which is a word in itself, but it's currently, it's actually Saturday morning, I'm lying, it's 10 to 3 in the morning. This is how strange, actually, this schedule is for us, you know, what is normally our Saturday, albeit now it's Saturday, it's sort of Saturday morning. But it's Friday, and I'm flying home tomorrow, which is Saturday, but we still got to do a race, but actually it's Sunday. So the entire thing's been actually really confusing. So the reason I've decided to do this in two parts is there's a lot to talk about, a little bit, and I don't want to sort of get on to whatever's going to happen Well, later. It's not even tomorrow. It's later. Stick with me on this. Is it? Yes, it is. It is later.
Trying.
So let's start really with Vegas. It's not my favourite place in the world, I won't lie. And I think that's because I've never really came in... I'm going to be honest and say really enjoyed it. Because I've always been doing some sort of work. So, okay, here we are. It started with... Oh, God, I'm going to get so confused by this, so please stick with me. Started on Thursday, which is normally the Friday, with FP1, which lasted 8 minutes. Now, I know, given some of my previous comments towards Vegas, you all expect me to go on some sort of rant about this. What I am going to say is I accept that can happen. That's fine. We all can, because it's a street circuit, and you know, street circuits are not necessarily designed to have race cars going on with the suction from the floors, lifting things. There's a it's very complex. So I know we saw Toto having a rant about this, but for anyone who thinks like, you know, this is completely unacceptable, yes, it is. But I would also say, there's not one bit of blame which lies anywhere. I reckon you need to blame. There's a lot of people. F1 need take a lot of responsibility. FIA need to take a lot of responsibility. Las Vegas organizer needs to take a lot of responsibility. And the reason I say that is simply, for me, leaving the strip open as long as they did, didn't allow really for the necessary checks to take place, which in turn, as for one of the better phrase, literally bit them in the arse a little bit. So FIA have homologated the track, I believe, on the Thursday. Yeah, whatever. I'm going to give up with days. So they said the track's okay. No one can expect what happened to happen. Now, there's a lot of talk whether the drains were welded down, not welded down, the concrete's failed, you know, whatever. It happens. Now, the turnaround to get that problem fixed and FP2 back on was admirable. And as much as it was frustrating for us, and I promise you it was horrendous, because, you know, we're just sat there, and bear in mind, it is very cold. In our terms, in the world of Formula One. The biggest tragedy actually happened then, because we got told basically, this is how it works. The session might start at 1 o'clock. The session might start at 1:30. The session might start at 2 o'clock. So you're sort of like, you're always sort of getting prepared to start. Drivers, engineers, everyone's sort of getting in their zone just to be told, okay, delay. Great. And this is where I promise you now, most of F1, our side of F1 is absolutely livid with Las Vegas. And that is, we got told that we're going to start at 2 o'clock in the morning. You got to bear in mind, fans have been sat for pretty much 8 hours by now on the cold seats in these cold stands, watching nothing. Occasionally the safety car going around. And then it gets to 2 o'clock, session delayed till 2:30. So like, oh, geez, you know, this is... And then... I can't tolerate this next bit. They then decide they're going to remove the fans from the stands because the security want to go home. And I just think with all the money and all the things that F1 have done to get this race on, to allow that to happen was disgraceful. So from that side, it actually sucked. Give me 2 seconds. So with that in mind, that bit was pretty awful. So that's sort of that done. Qualifying just happened, and the reason I'm doing this in 2 parts is actually that is a pretty exciting grid. It gives something good for tomorrow. So as much as you think I'm negative, I'm going to be deeply positive right at this point and say, so far it's actually been quite successful. And yeah, let's see how tomorrow goes. Over and out for now.
Okay.
Okay.
I need you to fire up the You're the Pits music, Brian.
You're the Pits.
And why I've asked you to do this is because we would normally do this at the end after we're debriefing on what we thought of the whole race weekend and all this kind of stuff. And because I think almost what Paul was hinting at there, that it redeemed itself the further it went into the weekend. I don't want to finish on the negativity. So I want to award my pits now. You can decide if you have different pits later when we get to that point. But my pits is Formula One. It's whatever the umbrella is that Paul just named, whether it's the FIA, F1, the whole thing, right? Because, okay, what was it, Azerbaijan, when the drain cover came off and hit George and they had to go around and weld them back down again and stuff? This stuff happens at street circuits,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
So, okay. However, you would have thought they would have had some extra checking, given that this has happened before in the past. B, they allowed themselves no contingency whatsoever for any type of wriggle room anywhere. They had no support races going, so they had nothing to even sort of sanity check the circuit before these go on. Now, I'm pretty sure that, well, I say I'm pretty sure, I've got zero knowledge of this, but those Ferrari GTs that go around probably don't generate enough suction under the car to do what Carlos Sainz did, but still, they wouldn't have known that. There was no attempt to rubber in. There was no kind of, there was just nothing from that perspective. Then, and it's the bit that Paul got angry at as well, is the sticking the fans out is just unforgivable. And then to compound it with 2, maybe 3 statements that didn't even apologize once for doing it. They just put out a statement going, "Oh yeah, FP2 was delayed." There was just like nothing. And then there was all this swell of kind of outrage about it. So now they've gone, well, they can all have a $200 voucher in the merch store. I'm like, seriously, you're going to print some special T-shirts that say "I was there for 8 minutes"? I mean, they absolutely screwed the pooch on that first practice day. So there we go. That's my rant. And then
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I already said. I mean, I think I said this. The schedule allowed no flex time, and so once something went wrong at all, it all went downhill from there. And the dominoes are terrible. And we talked about people who went for a day. As Rob and I are new attendees to an F1 race, if we'd had something similar happen to us in Canada, I can't even tell you how disappointed I would have been. And so,
Yeah.
like the way they handled it was terrible. And I mean, I'm sort of assuming that the security are union and that there are union rules. I don't know. I don't know if that was part of it or opening the track. I don't care. Like, they shouldn't have had to get to a point where that decision had to be made, and they did. I agree with everything you said. And for someone, and then someone kept saying refunds. Refunds don't matter. Most of these tickets are secondary market tickets. You're going to refund the purchaser, not the person who bought it on the secondary market.
True.
And who paid an incredible fee on top of it. If it was a $400 face value Thursday only ticket, it probably went for $1,200. And so that $800 markup is lost forever to the people who went and did it. And they didn't get the first $400 worth. So to me, I agree with everything you said. And the points I made earlier still stand. And they're totally in alignment with you and Paul. And I like the fact that you decided we would do this now so we could end on a positive, because that's what we always try to do.
Yeah, because I think that normally when we have the pits, it's a little bit of a laugh and we talk about a drive that didn't do too well, or one of the, usually Ferrari strategy is the pits. But they are just, I wanted to go a bit more guns blazing. Oh, and by the way, when you said about the security, that's yet another failure to plan, right? Because let's say that they couldn't have foreseen the drain thing, but this is a high speed, walls on each side circuit.
Red flags
so
had to be
of wreckage
expected.
and red flags would have meant that there was delay was probably likely. Why not have a second set of security staff on a rota, whatever the word is? They would come in the event of a delay to the session.
Agree. I was at bowling Thursday night, and we left so that we could get back and I could watch at home. And we were debating, would there be red flags and how late would this go? Like, that was foreseen by idiots like me. Anyway, okay. So then we get to the race, and I got to do one thing first. Rob usually starts us off. I'll turn it to you in a second. The only part where I hid behind my sofa and I pretended I wasn't American was the driver's parade. And not the parade itself, and not the 2 broken down cars. There were 2 that couldn't make it off the parade start, one of which dropped oil all over the side of the grid. But that's not even my point. My point is they brought in Bruce Buffer, who is not even Michael Buffer. He's not even the Let's Get Ready to Rumble guy. He's his brother. They brought in the wrong Buffer, and then Buffer goes nuts with these intros. And it was so cringeworthy as he's doing this and reading off his cards. And the worst was clearly Checo, because Checo's out a little early. Someone told him to go, and he starts walking out, and he walks to Bruce Buffer. And Bruce Buffer gets excited, and he starts yelling in his face his own name. Sergio Checo Perez, screaming it. You could see the veins in his neck. I'm like, this guy should not be here tonight. It was so embarrassing. And then Lewis's Mercedes broke, so he got in with Checo, and they went around together. And I was afraid Checo was going to fall out the side. I'm like, please hold on to him. We don't need this to happen here. And anyway, I'm done. That was the most. The parade itself was fine. The introduction of it was the embarrassing part.
The introduction was, and that's the only part in the entire weekend where I felt that Vegas did what I thought it would be for the entire weekend.
Yeah.
So, I can take one little sprinkle of that. But the funniest thing was obviously the press team in Red Bull hadn't given Checo any instructions of what to do after he announced his name. Because he kind of just stood there like, what, do I get a goodie bag? Where do I go now?
There were many people who didn't know, and like some of them were going to be interviewed by Natalie. And so then Natalie is like trying to grab them because I think some of them might have said, you're going to be interviewed. And they walked right up to Bruce Buffer. A couple of them, Charles, I think, did the same thing. He's like, where do I go? And then Natalie goes, Charles, over here. So but Checo's was the worst. And again, no fault of his own.
Brilliant. Right. Then we had the start, which, by the way, someone needs to send a memo to the commentary team when they keep mentioning about how there's dust and everything, and they keep saying you don't want to. It's on the dirty side. Just
track.
Finish the sentence off so that we could snip out a dirty side of the track, please. But anyway, great start from both Max and Charles. Considering it was all dusty on that side, I was expecting Charles to sprint away and be easily into the first corner, but no. Max goes in pretty hot.
Pretty hot. It was 2021, Max. That was.
It was, but I'm willing to give a little bit of a benefit of the doubt to the Bambi on ice effect of this track. The fact that nobody had any grip. I mean, we're going to talk in a minute about what happened when Alonso tried the exact same thing.
Well, Alonso did something even better.
Right?
No, we'll get into that. But I put it on Max.
No, it's on Max. But what I mean is, and they seem to give a lot more leeway for these first corner incidents, but they didn't. He ended up getting a penalty for it. But
it deserved.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it was an elbows out Max from the pass he really went into him. I think he came in too hot, and then because back in the day he would usually he got his penalty. So
I thought he did it on purpose. You thought it was a little more accidental. Either way, he deserved the penalty for it. Moving on, then at the back, Fernando, the wily old two-time champion campaigner who never makes mistakes, decided to go from the right side of the grid to the left side, past about 19 cars, which is what I like to do when I run NASCAR on the Xbox. You go down the inside and then you just bounce off the cars as you get to the corner as you're braking. He said, you know what? I'm going to pull a sap move and do a NASCAR, and I'm going to go down the inside and have no thoughts of braking. And I'm going to just bounce off everybody and it'll be fine. And then he applies the brakes and he's like, oh no. And that was
goes round in a circle. Collects, ruins Sainz and Bottas opening lap, and they're all just kind of in a pile of debris looking at each other going, what the hell happened here?
Well, and Valtteri was hit from the back, pushed him into Fernando even better. It's not like he would have hit him anyway, but it's like someone, I don't remember, I thought it was an Alpine maybe, but someone's like, you know what, here, I'm going to give you a little help getting into this accident of none of your doing.
Yeah, exactly. So then we immediately got a virtual safety car so they could come out and pick up all the broken pieces of car. And it just looked like people were struggling for grip, and everybody predicted this. It was just going to be, and I think they kept, what do they say? This is like a damp track on intermediates at the moment. It's got that kind of feel when you're watching the cars and really not trusting the grip here. It's got that kind of feel to it.
Turkey 2019 or 2020, I can't remember the year, but there was one race in particular at Turkey where it was the same thing. It was like the new track, new asphalt, cold, and just ice.
And we saw on a trackside camera a sprinkling of shower of sparks, and everyone was like, what the heck was that? And then 2 seconds later, we've got safety car and we've got Lando in a wall, which looked like he'd just gone long at the corner, missed the braking zone and driven into the wall, and that's what it looked like. And then you get the replay. Oh no, he decided to kind of do a 180 and go backwards and all over the shop as he lost.
That was scary.
That was, it was.
And as of recording, he's fine. So we saw this morning he's been let out of hospital, but he was taken to the medical center, and then instead of returning to the paddock, they did take him to the hospital for additional checks. So I hope he's all right, because that was higher impact than I think anyone gave it credit for. It didn't look that bad. As you said, you just saw the sparks, then he was in the barrier on the runoff. But no, he lost it seriously, went into the barrier, spun around, and then just kept going. It was an unwilling participant after that part. So we had a safety car for that. And then at that time, they announced the penalty for Max, the 5 seconds, which took a long time, it felt like. And so I almost thought they'd forgotten about it when the whole safety car was going. I'm like, is he going to get away scot-free with that? Sorry, I know there's a lot of Max fans. It just annoyed me when he did that to start the race. And again, I'm done with it now. And then
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, then we just started getting like some foreshadowing of what was going to happen all race. Really, we just started getting people putting moves on folk. We got Ocon got K Mag, and was you had Oscar coming up right behind him, and he boom boom boom. It just, people were overtaking everyone. It wasn't just. I saw a real split view on Twitter after the race on here. A whole bunch of people going, "Oh yeah, it was only good. We only had good overtaking because DRS was so powerful. What a ball fest!" Hello, did you get up and watch the race, or are you just saying that it must have been? Because actually, yes, DRS mainly in tire offset modes where people the tires were a little bit older than people that had fresher ones. In that situation, the DRS did tend to get them, but actually, a lot of the time, it just dropped you into the braking zone. You had to decide if you were going to send it or not. And then we saw a lot of on the inside and on the outside of
Yes.
various corners. I mean, we saw way more overtakes than I was expecting in this
Way
race.
more.
And
And
started at lap 9 basically after the safety car reset, and I don't think it really stopped. It just seemed to be neither one of us wrote lull in the notes,
no,
and it didn't feel like there ever was one. We always somebody was in within DRS of somebody else, but that never seemed to develop into a DRS train. Albon was kind of holding people
he
up at
had
one
one
point,
train going for a while, yeah.
but that got broken pretty quickly. It was.
It did. I agree, and you
Yeah.
know it's interesting. You're the I hate DRS man. You even have it tattooed on your lower back like a tramp
I do,
stamp.
yeah.
And so what I don't understand is why people. I thought this race was phenomenal, and the first 40 of 50 laps were filled the entire time with overtakes, many of them for the lead. And so, it wasn't all DRS. Now, did DRS, as you say very accurately, did it enable some of the overtakes where you still had to do it in a corner or on the next corner after? Yes, but it wasn't like all of them were just blow-bys on the straight, and that was the end of it. There were
Those are the
some
ones
of
that drive
those.
me nuts. You know that.
I know, and there were some of those, but that's not what it was. You got into the braking spot, and especially on turn 14, which is coming off the strip around Planet Hollywood, and you're making the left there. And by the way, the layout of those corners was fantastic. It was high risk, high reward for everybody, even turn 12 to get onto the strip, and the whole area around the sphere were interesting corners to watch people do. I thought this track was going to suck. I called it the upside down pig forever. I only got excited about it until basically 2 weeks ago. I thought this thing over delivered somehow, and I don't understand.
I agree. And we had a triple whammy of things that I was just getting excited and writing on the laptop of the notes. So I was sort of propped up on my sofa with beer in one hand, laptop in the other. I'm like, I'm typing because there's so much stuff going on. It was like we had what Sainz was trying to get past Danny Rick, but was in sitting behind him for a while. And we got a weird message about you need to pull out and cool the car down. And commentary team seemed to say that they'd like taped up a lot of the ducts to kind of give him less drag and make the car faster. But that means you can't sit behind a car for too long. I was like, oh, great. Is Sainz weekend just going to go from worse to worse here? He gets hit through the bottom of the floor with a drainage cover, and now he's going to have to retire a car because they taped the the griller. But he didn't. He got him. And then Piastri did a lunge on Logan from like about 3 miles back.
Piastri was
no grip.
Can I just say this? A preview. He was my driver of the day. I don't know if he's my king of the pits per se, but he was on a mission. He was the Australian Terminator. He was out there. Anyone he got close to, he goes, I'm taking your spot. I'm taking your car, and you can get out of here. Goodbye. I mean, he was on fire. Like, we were going, I watched with a few guys, we were going nuts watching. Like, every time they showed a papaya, because, Lando's out, I'm like, it's got to be Oscar. And there he goes, and there he goes. And he's always right up someone's trumpet. And then they get to a corner, he goes, I'll take this corner, thank you. Wow.
I know. And then even at this point now, I'm like, I was expecting Max to disappear off into the sunset and the 5-second penalty not to matter. But Charles is like, hold my beer, and starts like eking into him. And it's like, he's not going to pull away and disappear into the sunset here. And Charles got back into Max's DRS, and a lap later he nailed him. I know Max was probably getting ready to pit anyway, but you don't see Max want to get overtaken on track.
Never.
He had no defense to that pass. It was just awesome. He pits, and this is how like tired I was at this time in the morning. In he comes, and then they got the low level camera down by the wheel gun at the back, and the guy doesn't start moving. I'm like, they've messed the pit stop up. What they've done, this is a real slow stop for Max. And then the commentary team were like, obviously sensing there must be a lot of tired people in the world that have no clue and can't remember like a goldfish what happened 7 seconds ago. And they're like, and Max is serving his 5-second penalty. I'm like, oh yeah, of course he is.
Well, and then as he came back out into 11th, the downer for me was Lewis and Oscar coming together because I honestly I thought Oscar was going for a podium. Like as I'm watching
He
this,
could
as
have
he's
been.
going up the order, I'm like, he is going to turn a car that couldn't get out of Q1 for either driver into a podium car by his sheer will of dragging it forward. But yeah, contact between Lewis and Oscar, and they both had punctures. And I had to explain to everyone why there were so many sparks because one of the tires was flat, and what's the spark made out of? And then I missed half the race. Just kidding. And then, but we saw then Checo was in second at this point with Charles in first. He comes into pit, but he comes out third, but ahead of Sainz. It was by lap 25. I couldn't process how good this race was. I'm like, we are halfway there, and there has been not a second of anything boring. And
Yeah.
I was waiting to hear Lando was okay at this point because I was still kind of like, I'm nervous around street tracks. You've heard me, like when we go to Saudi Arabia and the Jeddah street course, I'm always deathly afraid someone's going to get hurt. And it's like too high speed, too many walls. This had no grip, and I'm like, please, like let's get out of here with no
Well,
issues.
thankfully it didn't happen, and Lando's fine. So
Thank
then
God.
Sainz's tires, he's been on these since like the dawn of man. And so Russell and Max kind of get past him, but then Max tries to take Russell, and um, Russell just had a brain fart. Like he just turned in on him. He just didn't like the commentary team. I was like thinking, if I got this wrong, has Max done something here that he shouldn't have done? But then the reaction to the penalty, there was nothing really from George's radio going, I can't believe we got a penalty. In fact, they were just saying, like, just put it down, keep going, you can keep pushing on. Like they knew they needed to build that. No one seemed that upset about it on the Mercedes side of it. And every time they showed a replay, I don't know what he was looking at, but he just turned in while had got the corner. Max was alongside him and had got the corner, and George just turned in on him. This is where the sporting gods have funny ways. Valtteri can't do right for doing wrong, not with any of his own accord. Like he ends up in
Right.
every kind of situation where there's a crash or something that happens that's got nothing to do with him. He will sometime, like a tractor beam, be gravitated into it. Okay, Max gets his end plate smashed off by George, and it just makes his car faster. I mean, what kind of
Well, I mean,
because he'd been struggling with straight line speed, and then
he
all of a
had.
sudden, from that impact onwards, his car turned into a rocket ship.
Well, and
It's
so
just not fair.
watching this, live, I thought it was on Max at first, and I was wrong. But when they first showed it, I thought he went for a dive bomb on the inside, and it looked at first that George had started turning already, which is not correct. It was on George. I watched it again this morning. It definitely is George's fault. That's why George got the penalty and dropped him down the order at the end. But I'm sitting there thinking, what is Max doing? But they showed it again, and he was not only alongside him, he could have waved at George. He goes, "Hi, I'm turning inside here. You shouldn't turn into me." And George turned into him. So
Maybe
that
something
was
had just come on the sphere or something, and George was like, "Oh, look at that! That's cool."
maybe he was looking up at the lawyer thing, like I'm gonna get on that class action from practice. Yeah.
Gosh.
So,
And then we had another safety car then for the
Yeah.
debris that had been Nick De Vries had been left all over the floor after
Mhm.
the end plate was smashed off. So we got ourselves another restart. Your man again, Oscar nailed the gas man.
He was on a mission. Outside of a puncture from the contact with Lewis, I swear to God, he had a podium coming. He's on an absolute mission. And then they announced Russell's penalty, and at the time, I'm like, why? But then again, I watched it again this morning with clear eyes, and it's a Russell penalty, of course. And then we end up with Checo taking the lead at lap 32. And at this point, I wanted Charles to win. I'm just being honest.
Okay.
I wanted
You're a
so
Checo guy.
badly. I know I'm a Checo guy, but I'm kind of over always making excuses for him at this point of the season. And I'd love for him to win, and he's a street course expert and yada, yada, yada. I wanted Charles to win. Charles hasn't won from pole in forever. I'm like, please let this happen. Please, Ferrari gods, don't give him a 4.4 second pit stop somewhere along the way, which they did. Thanks, guys. And so it didn't matter. No, it didn't. But anyway, yeah, I was loving it. The Alpines started battling at this point, and I know Otmar was watching from somewhere around the world thinking, yeah, it's your problem now. And they say, hold position, Esteban, and they either that didn't come through at all into his ears, or it was a delayed message or whatever, but the two of them just kept going after each other. I'm like, this is phenomenal.
And then the bit that I didn't quite understand, and maybe it was when they explained about Checo had got a different rear wing that wasn't giving him as much straight line speed. He seemed to have the straight line speed to take Charles. He disappeared into the distance and got ahead of Charles by about 2 seconds, and then seemed to let Charles kind of close in. And the commentary team were kind of said the same sort of thing I was thinking. Is he trying to do a Carlos Sainz here and use Charles to defend against Max because he wants to win? So if he keeps Charles in his DRS and keeps towing him along, it's going to make Max much harder to get past Charles. Okay, fair play, Checo, if you're trying that. And then out of nowhere, the next camera shot was Charles sending one down the inside and going, yep, I'll have that place back, thanks.
That was a great move by Charles, by the way.
It was, but I couldn't understand where Checo's pace went. And they
I
said
don't know.
he had a thicker rear wing that wasn't set up for
Right.
the straight line speed as much. So while he could get into DRS and use the toe to get past him, once he was past him, he was basically hitting the air and being slowed down by that. But whatever it was, Charles, great move. But like I said, Max's rocket ship, take the end plate off, it unpacks turbo pursuit mode, and he just came through.
And then he gets
and
right up Charles' trumpet, and Charles goes deep in a corner. And when he did that, I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no. And then Max literally could have like walked by. See ya. See you later, alligator. Yeah. Anyway, we kind of get to the end, and then Piastri pits, and I got to be honest, I didn't know he had been on the same compounds. I didn't know he had not changed compounds. And he was rolling backwards a little bit at this point. He wasn't as aggressive. And I'm screaming at the TV like, he's going to lose a spot or two at most. Leave him out there. And then Rob types in the notes, is Brian paying attention? They've been talking about the fact he's done hard for about 10 laps, so we'll need to get a new compound in here, you idiot. And I basically was like, it was hard to pay attention.
Always here for you, Brian. Got your back.
So I was confused by that. But yeah. Then we get kind of towards the end, and Rob, take us home here on the race.
Get towards the end, and I'm kind of just seeing this is it now. You've got Max has won it, although, and he did. I mean, he absolutely flew into a 5-second lead out of
5-second
nowhere.
lead.
Checo's kind of getting hassled by Charles, but Charles keeps kind of flirting with DRS. He's like 1.001, so he doesn't get it one lap. Then he's 0.9 and he gets it, but only really kind of comes down to 0.6. But they come over the radio and they're like, Max, can you back up a little bit and kind of help Checo out with the toe just to help your teammate out? Which actually, fair play to him. We didn't have flashbacks of the, it's not my problem moment.
He did.
He eased off.
Significantly.
2.5 seconds. I'm not quite sure how much
but
2.5 helps, but...
Well, hang on. It was over the course of one lap. And so to give 2.5 seconds to the guy who's trying to beat you still there's only so much you can ease off the gas and not let Checo into your own DRS, and then he passes you. So I actually thought Max played it perfectly. Like, I mean, you can't stop the car and let them go by, but you also can't, he could have said F you and motored off like he did last year. I thought he did a great job. And after I realized...
And I was pleased to see Max do that and kind of play the team game. I mean, also, he's won everything, so it doesn't really matter. But I was pleased to see him do that. Then, so we're watching it, and he keeps flirting in and getting down to like 0.3, 0.4. And then out of nowhere, Charles is kind of like, do you know what? I'm going to lull him into a false sense of security here, where I'm going to get close-ish, but never really going to send one because I'll probably get overtaken by him in a straight line speed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to nail him on the last lap on the last corner and see how he likes that.
The last they came out of 14. I think he had him on 17. But yes, 2 weeks in a row, or 2 races in a row, I should say. What an overtake. I mean, I'll just say this real quick. The first 40 laps of 50 were amazing, or 43 laps of 50 were amazing. I got up at this point and grabbed some pizza and another beer, and I'm like, okay, we may have 7 laps of boredom. The race is done. Max is motoring off. Charles can't get to Checo. There's not a lot of people in DRS at this point. And then they decided to give us another thrilling finish. And Checo decided to get screwed at the line again. He's lost 2 spots on the last lap in 2 races by 0.2 of a second total. I mean, that is wild and such bad luck. But Charles, what driving? With the exception of that time he went deep into that corner, I thought he was pretty much flawless on the day. And just, it was fun to watch. Max, again, I'm maybe overly hard on him for the first lap penalty. He did nothing wrong with George on the other coming together. Max was fantastic. Everybody, overtakes were amazing, and Oscar was just a man on a mission coming back through the field. I have some stats here. about other people. We have not talked about Lance F. Stroll, your account. He was phenomenal,
Well, I
and
was
he
going to say,
deserves credit. We'll
if
get
we
to
look
it.
at there's a couple of bits we haven't pulled out, and I was going to say, yeah, if you look at the rest of the points, then so we have Max, Charles, and Checo. Then Ocon deserves a shout out for bringing
Yes.
it home in fourth, right? Stroll in
Totally.
fifth, definitely. Sainz, okay. Hear me out on this one, Brian.
Yeah.
I think Ferrari's strategy pulled a bit of a blinder. There was a lot of people saying when we had the safety car, I think it was, and both Red Bulls pitted and went onto fresh hards, Charles didn't, but Sainz did. And everybody was like, why has he done that? Because Charles should have pitted as well. He's the one going for the win. Okay, hear me out here. If Charles had pitted and got fresh hards, and that meant that he would have gone on and won, I don't think Sainz would have had, because Sainz couldn't have pitted then. They didn't have the ability to double sack at that point. So Sainz wouldn't have come in, right? Therefore, I don't think Sainz would have had the pace differential to be able to close down and make that charge back up the field. So let's say Charles wins it, gets 25 points, but Sainz doesn't catch the Mercedes and finishes behind them. So if we're looking at Mercedes versus Ferrari here, you get Charles gets 25 points for winning it. Assume that Sainz doesn't catch the two Mercs because he doesn't get his new rubber. So both Mercs finish ahead of him and he's out of the points. They'll get 14 points for finishing where they finished. So Ferrari would take 11 points home over Mercedes. Okay. By not pitting Charles and pitting Sainz and putting fresh rubber on him, he hunted both Mercedes down and passed both of them. Okay. Charles didn't end up winning, but then Ferrari get a combined 26 point out of Sainz. Merck's now a push for one spot further back because Sainz has gone past them. They come away with 10 points. So Mercedes brought 16 points on Mercedes. Ferrari took a bite of 16 points out of Mercedes this week. So Ferrari's strategy nailed that. I don't think they knew they didn't have the pace to catch Max. Boom.
I got 4 hours sleep. I don't understand
just
the thing
believe
you
me, the
just
math
said.
adds up. Don't worry.
I am in the same place Paul is with the day of the week is with what story you just told. I don't know what you said, but sounds great. Yeah. So I missed the podium and the cool down car. Tell me about it.
We'll come to that now, but yeah, you see, you're not giving me any credit for the science thing there. Sainz
it's brilliant. It sounds
brilliantly to come
fantastic.
back
I feel like Zach Galifianakis when they put the things over the math when he has no idea what's happening.
All I'm saying is Ferrari maximized their point haul this week, which is going to be very, very important because now that puts them within. I'd have to go and check the website, but we are talking that it's all up for grabs in Abu Dhabi between Ferrari and Mercedes now.
Nice.
That was a big difference of points this week. But yeah, so then we had Hamilton, Russell, Alonso, and Piastri closed out the points. And afterwards, and you missed this, and I can't believe you missed it, there was no cool-down room. And instead of a cool-down room, and this is the bit where Vegas might want to rethink this for next year because it didn't really work for me, they had a cool-down car, which was brilliant. I love the cool-down car. But so they all get in the back of this limo, and the cameras are like watching the three of them sitting in this. So they're doing the cool-down room, but in the back of a limo. So we got the cool-down car. Amazing. But instead of driving them to the podium, which is where I thought they were going, they randomly drove to the Bellagio where Coulthard had interviewed them it was a bit of a wooden interview. It was a little bit forced. He kept trying to get Max to say that he loves Vegas, which was a bit awkward. But the main thing was to get them over there so they could then do the fountain and light show outside the Bellagio. They made the three drivers watch the fountains going.
Really?
Then they got them back in the cool down car, and then they drove all the way back to do the podium. I'm like, did Bellagio have something in the contract where they were like, yeah, I know what the drivers are going to want to see at the end of the race. They're going to want to come and look at the fountains and do a light show. And I was like, yeah, that feels like something you optionally do afterwards when the whole thing's done. People want to see the podium at the end of a race. So cool down car was cool. I did like the cool down car. Next year, I would advise driving them from where they park up in the pits but maybe they wouldn't need the car then because I think it was in the pits where they had those, the opening ceremony, they did the uppy downy things.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool down car, cool. Bellagio fountains, not so much.
That sounds terrible. You remember last year at Miami when they had to drive them to the podium and Max got in the golf cart with a police escort on a motorcycle? So yeah, U.S. has got to work out our podium situation a little bit. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think we probably need to wrap up. We've done the pits, so we got to do our King of the Pits now. So do you want to fire up the jingle and give us your
will,
King
and
of the
see
Pits?
if I can regulate the volume because I haven't had a chance to fix it. Here we go.
Hey, you're the king of the pit.
All right, I'm going to go first because I've been kind of hinting at it, and it'll get out of the way real quick. I thought Oscar Piastri's 10th was the best 10th place finish I've seen anyone do in a long time. Beginning of the year, Yuki had a run of 10ths when the Alpha Tauri was horrible. And I thought, I was very impressed with his run of those 10ths and a couple 11ths. And he deserved the credit for dragging a car around there. This felt like that to me. Like Oscar was on a mission, and not only a mission to take a car that he struggled with in quali, but he was aggressive yet fair with his overtakes. He didn't look like a rookie at all. And I thought the way he drove was fantastic. I know the Lewis contact, we could, take that apart a little bit more if we wanted. If he'd had if the strategy had come to him a little bit with the way the safety cars worked and all of the different times when he changed tires and didn't have to have that last pit stop, which cost him dearly, he would have been farther up the course. So for me, somehow I got a 10th place finisher as my king of the pits in the Oscar man.
And I was glad I kept my powder dry when you prompted me to ask about it, because my king of the pits, look at this, here we go. I'm getting my early season prediction comes back so I can actually say
Lance
Stroll. Okay. And this was a tie. It was a flip of a coin between Stroll and Ocon, because when I kind of looked at it, and I had to almost double check this, is that Lance Stroll started 19th on the grid
Yes, he did.
and brought it home 5th. Ocon started 16th and brought it home 4th. These guys were not quite in witness protection, because nobody was in witness protection today, because we kind of saw everybody doing everything all the time. But they just went about their business, didn't get caught up in anything. I mean, Sainz behind them, there's 3 of them in a row there that did phenomenal drives from what happened to them. Sainz had the 10 grid penalty and then ended up right at the back with all the ridiculousness at the beginning and drove the wheels off that thing to come back to 6th. So, but I'm going to give it a sentimental one to Lance Stroll there, because he gets a lot of crap from us, rightly so. But I thought this week he absolutely nailed it.
Can I preview? I'll use my stat now. Something about Lance that you did highlight where he came from. 9th on the grid to 5th. He's had back-to-back 19th. Sorry, thank you. I'm tired. 19th on the grid to 5th, but he's had back-to-back 5th place finishes. He was 5th in Brazil as well. So don't go sleeping on Lance Stroll. Just you can take 4,000 or 5,000 races in the middle of the season off, but then he'll be back. Okay. Shall we do
see what
Pitlane
Paul made
Paul?
of it?
Yeah, we already played his music once, so you don't get it twice, buddy boy. Here we go. His second report.
Yo. So, okay, that's Las Vegas done and dusted. Yeah. It takes a good man to say you were wrong. It takes a good man to stand up and say, look, okay, maybe I made mistakes in life. I've doubted this race. I've been negative for this race. I've been anti-Vegas. I've been sad about it. The annoying thing I think with Vegas a little bit is it sort of grew on me as the weekend went on, and I know I touched yesterday on the issues we had on Thursday. I'm going to get the days right. The issues we've had on Thursday, and I stand by them. That happens, and I don't think we should. As much as it is embarrassing for Vegas, I get that, but like I've said, it isn't. Not one person's responsible. I'm not going to do that again. We've done that, and obviously then we had. I will say one thing as well, which I don't think I touched on yesterday, and that is the incident with Carlos Sainz, which obviously brought all this about. And the fact that guy had a penalty, I actually spoke to him today as we go and sort of lining up for a driver parade. And like I said, in like nearly 25 years of doing this sport, that is the most ridiculous decision I've ever known. And that sentiment, by the way, was shared by everyone. Listen, there's always politics. And at the end of the day, Mercedes are going to be delighted that he's got the penalty. And I'm not saying Mercedes are solely the ones that said that the penalty should apply, if anyone. But again, you have to remember the money at stake here. So the money, the monies that you receive from finishing second, third, fourth, is excessive. So that's sport politics, and it should never have happened. It was disgraceful. Let's leave that well behind, and let's go on to what was race day here. It was carnage. It was mayhem. The grid is. I didn't go to the grid, luckily. And the grid was everybody came back from a media perspective. We're just sort of like, oh man, Jesus, it's just too much. And And I'm lucky enough to have a photograph of Donny Osmond, who sung your national anthem. And I said to him, and I stand by this, that is probably the best national anthem of the season. Not because it's the American national anthem. Why would I say that? I'm just saying it was like the first time someone's just got there and sang a national anthem and not tried to change it, not tried to make anything of it. Just a legend of his work stood there. And my word, on everything, that was absolutely sensational. And that started what was actually a really good race. From our side, we were sort of dead and buried on turn one when Fernando and all of the cars just had no grip, which was actually completely expected. And sometimes you have luck, sometimes you don't have luck. We never have luck. It's so frustrating. It is so frustrating to have these issues week after week where we just luck out. Crying aside, the actual race, listen, everyone doubted Vegas. I doubted Vegas. I've been massively critical of this place. Boy, oh boy, did it deliver. The race was fantastic. There's not many races where you can see that many changes of leadership for a start. The positional, people out of position. Gasly running in fourth, Sargent running in sixth, and it sort of all worked out in the end to where people maybe arguably should have been or shouldn't have been. But it was a race that delivered a lot. There was a lot more overtaking than I thought there would be. There was a lot more action than I thought there would be. The Perez-Leclerc battle at the end. Listen, I can put my hands up and say I'm wrong. Las Vegas, you delivered. You guys in America be hugely proud and never be afraid to admit that you got something wrong. And I think that's, again, a sentiment shared by a lot of people in the paddock, whereas a lot of people are, all right, we all dismiss this one as being one that's going to suck and it's going to be horrendous. I think everyone's sort of like, okay, we want to go home. It's exhausting, as Las Vegas is. It's exhausting. But we sort of we're looking forward to coming back next year. And, congratulations on another successful Grand Prix in the United States. Congratulations on your 101st episode as well, by the way. And thank you so much. We have one more to go next week in Abu Dhabi, the land of the camel. And for now, I'm going to go and have a well-earned beer at 20 to 4 in the morning because we're in Las Vegas. Over and out.
Paul, thank you. Thank you for doing that in the middle of the night for us, man.
That's
we
awesome.
really appreciate it.
But it did make me think, now we close out before we put a pin in Vegas. A couple of things that we didn't highlight, but I was too tired.
Or
I know you, and this Sapstat story, but the grid walk. I didn't really see much of it. I saw Martin Brundle having to be fought to let in when he was trying to duck under a tape to even get into there. And I saw Shaq at one point go past and just say, "Lewis Hamilton, baby."
That was the best. He was with the Red Bull team posing with Christian Horner. And then he turns the corner and Martin goes, "Shaq, are you interested in Lewis Hamilton, baby?" And just walks away. I'm like, all right.
So there was that. We didn't mention, we didn't really dig into the Williams. It was unfortunate. I think they suffered with tyres towards the end. Both of them were going backwards. It's not Sargent went backwards, and so did Albon. They were both it didn't quite come to them. They had great qualifying pace, great early race pace, and then it kind of fell away. And there was something else, Paul, that touched on that. Now I can't remember. I'm too tired. I remember 2 out of 3 things. Let's go with that. Let's go over to Sapstats. You got a jingle for us?
Well, we got to use Slap House when you're in Vegas.
True.
Sapstats Vegas edition. Vegas, baby, Vegas! And today we are once again liberally using Sean Kelly's stats as an addition to some of mine because I slept since the race and then woke up and showered and here I am. But we heard a lot of these on the telecast, right? So Red Bull broke Mercedes' single-season record of 19 wins in a year, which was set in 2016, the magical Nico and Lewis year. Verstappen tied Seb's 53 career wins, putting him third all-time on the list behind Lewis Hamilton's 103 and Schumacher's 91, tied with Seb. That's rarefied air. I mean, those are 4 of the greatest drivers of all time. And anyone who would doubt Max being in that has to stop. He's the first driver to ever win 3 times in a country. because he won Miami, he won Austin, and now he won Las Vegas. And I don't think countries have ever had 3 races before. So, and if they have, it was a very long time ago.
Somebody has to be first, I guess.
I guess Verstappen has now won 16 of the last 17 Grand Prix and 18 races overall this year, which extends his own record. Obviously, Checo's won twice and Carlos has won once. And so we have 1 race left, and we'll see what we do in the 22nd race of the year. It was Verstappen's 20th podium of the season, also extending his own single-season podium record. Charles, it was his 5th podium finish of 23 for Ferrari. I was surprised when I saw that. I thought there had been more for some reason. I guess some of the form they've had at times recently made me forget about the lull he had throughout the beginning of the season. And then this stat, we've done this one before. Leclerc has now failed to win from his last 12 pole starts, which is just one short, 13. We remember this, Rene Arnaud's record in 79 to 82. And so we already talked about Checo losing on the last lap for the 2nd race in a row. However, the good news is, and this was again talked about a lot on the telecast, Checo clinched 2nd in the Drivers' Championship. So Red Bull has a 1-2 for their first time ever having a 1-2 for the championship as a whole, which is, I mean, they won the constructor, they won 1 and 2 in the driver. Adrian Newey is a GOAT. You can't ignore it. And then the couple we already hit, Ocon from 16th to 4th. The only time he's finished higher this year was Monaco, where he was 3rd. Remember that Ocon podium, which was a shocker. And then Lance Stroll finished 5th. We already said this, back-to-back 5th place finishes. He started 19th. That is amazing. And what the stat I talked about coming into the race, where I was worried about Carlos's standing, he leapfrogged Lando and Fernando in the standings and moved into 4th because he finished P6 today. Lewis finished P7, which kind of locks him into 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, but put a pin in that one because I'm going to talk about George's place in the Drivers' Championship in a second. Obviously, we had a 5-second penalty. George did, finished P8, which means he will finish 8th in the Drivers' Championship. George will. 8th. Lewis is 3rd. The 8th for a Mercedes driver is the lowest position for a Mercedes driver since 2012. When Nico was 9th and Schumi was 13th. That's not a good look for George. I know we have a lot of George fans on here, but that's you got to do better than that. Piastri was 10th, but also had the fastest lap of the race. It's good when you pit with 4 or 5 laps left. You can do that. And that's about all I had that I wanted to highlight. I thought Piastri was brilliant, but I get your Lance love. It's well-deserved. Well-deserved, for sure.
Okay, so that was Vegas. Are you going to do the fantasy update?
Yeah, do it real fast. So
okay,
let's do Vegas first itself. Number 1, Mansell's Mustache, 376 points, followed very closely by a tie for 2nd, San Gaucho El Coelho F1, Sergio Ed, and then followed by My Brain Choice, Relampico Marquinhos, Crash Team Racing 1, and a tie for Lando Legends, Michael Cronje 16, and FPL Instinctive. Finishing the top 10 for this week, Haley Torque F10. So great job by everybody there. I'll highlight the top 3 because we are coming into the end of the year and a t-shirt is on the line, and it is close, Rob. It is close. When you look at the overall season, FPL Instinctive, 6,517 points, 6,517 points, followed with 6,511, 6 points difference at this point, Michael Cronje 16. Followed in 3rd, a little further back, Relampico Marquinhos. So whomever comes across as the winner there, because on the overall season, Much Mistaken took the first half and can't get a t-shirt again, and they're down a bit. So one of those 3, it looks like, will be our champion and win the t-shirt, but only 1 race left. What do you guys have? Let's see what you got going into Abu Dhabi. And speaking of Abu Dhabi,
speaking of which, yeah.
would you want to tell us a little bit about it there, Robert?
Oh, I'm too tired. I can't be bothered. No. So it's like we're coming into the final push now of the episode, and then we can go sleep. So, yeah, Abu Dhabi, day-night race, 58 laps, 3.2 miles long. Yeah, first race, 2009. Because you wrote these notes. Is that right? It can't have been around that long. No way.
This is a shocker to me, too.
Wow. 2009, won by Seb. Yeah, let's not mention the
2021
race.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
It happened.
Even though it launched our
happened
podcast, it didn't happen.
What else we got here? Yeah, it was a blank canvas for developers, and they've turned it into a big tourist attraction. And in those 11 years, they've spent 40 billion or 40 Aston Martins on
Teams. Nicely done. Nicely done.
7 hotels, a Ferrari indoor theme park, a mall, a water park, a golf course, a beach, a concert arena, a nightclub. Yeah, fantastic. There's going to be some places for Paul to hang out and go camel watching. So yeah.
Max has won the last 2, right? I definitely won in 21, and he won last year. So he's looking to close it out again. Interestingly, this is one of the ones I always love to find. A lot of people give Abu Dhabi grief for being boring, and a couple years ago they redid a couple corners to try to improve overtaking opportunities. But only once in the 14 races that's been there has anyone won from other than the front row. It was a 4th place. So if you're not in the top 2, it does not look good for you to win this race. Now, again, someone won from 4th, so it's possible, but it's not likely. So a good reminder as we go into Abu Dhabi next week, pay close attention to quali. It's going to matter more than you think.
And talking of winners, so repeat winners, Lewis has got 5. I don't see him adding to that. Seb has got 3. He won't add to that. Max has got 3. He will add to that, I think.
Yeah.
And Kimi and Valtteri are single winners, and Nico. Repeat constructors: Mercedes 6, Red Bull 6, McLaren 1, Lotus Renault 1, Kimi in 2012. So comes down to this, Brian. Prediction time. I can't remember who went first. I think, let's say, I'll go after you, sir. Yeah,
Okay.
I think I went first last week.
Well, not really thinking through the track enough to figure out if McLaren will be decent or bad. I'm going to go with Max to win. I'm going to go with Lando second, and I'm going to go with Charles third, which might actually be, I think I might have said Max, Charles, Lando. Or no, anyway, I think those are the 3 I had on the podium, not the order for this week, but that's where I'm going. I'm going to assume that Lando's okay and he's back in the car, and the McLaren fires up, and Charles is going to get on a podium just to leave the season with us all wanting more.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, I had a little glance to see what last year's top 3 were, and it was Max, Charles, Checo, which interestingly was today's podium. So that Ferrari does look like it's kind of a little phoenix from the flames after it was like in no man's land for the middle of the season. So I'm going to say rinse and repeat. Same podium as both last year and today. Max, Charles, Checo. There we go.
So we have slightly different order, and I replaced Checo with Lando.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we are.
Nothing to really fight for. I mean, there are maybe some battles throughout. We haven't done enough analysis in the constructors, but the top
I just
3
did
drivers.
that whole spiel about Ferrari and Mercedes that you glazed over with. It's all on the line for seconds for that constructor's spot.
It's a different.
I think
it's a large enough delta.
If I quickly bring this up. Come on, good old BBC Sport. You can.
It is 4 points.
Here
actually.
we go.
You're right. Ferrari is only 4 points behind Mercedes. You're right. Actually, that's what's to fight for. Right there, that is it. There's another couple. Aston Martin's only 9 behind McLaren.
Yeah, you've got. I think you've got those 2 kind of main fights going against each other. Ferrari definitely maximised their points today, and despite Sainz's awful start to the week, they've massively clawed that back. And like you say, we've got 4 points difference. So that's going to be great watching Ferrari and Mercedes go at it. And then, yeah, Aston, if Stroll can keep this form up from this week and Alonso can do things and McLaren don't have a great race like this weekend, then Aston could do a switcheroo with McLaren there. So there's two decent constructor spots still up for grabs on here. And like Paul said in his note, a lot of money on the line.
Definitely. And we can't ignore the fact that Carlos and Fernando are tied on 200 points each. So we'll see what happens there as well. They're technically Carlos is 4th because he won a race, but they're tied with 200. So there are some battles. We're searching a little bit for the gold and silver lining of it, whatever it may be. But I would just say this was a much better race and a much better end to the weekend than the way it started. Rob, before I close, anything else you want to highlight, buddy?
No, I mean, if Mercedes could do a 1-2 and Red Bull could completely crash out, then Mercedes could actually manage to not have half of the points of Red Bull. That's about the only saving grace they could get to.
Let's hope. And with that, everyone, thanks so much for listening this week. We hope you enjoyed the race as much as we did, and we will talk to you next week to recap the final race of the 2023 season. Be well, everybody.